Silence the word, only in dark the light, only in dying life. Speak to us, God, your life-giving word. Hi, friends. I'm Mother Sylvia at St. Mark's, and I'm here with my friend Nick, who is going to tell us another one of the Bible stories for the 40 days. This is about someone who is super powerful and famous and important when he was a grown up. But of course, he wasn't always a grown up. So, this is a story about when he was a kid. So, get comfortable, take some deep breaths, maybe sing along with the song, or just listen and open your heart and get ready for a story. Only in silence the word, only in dark the light, only in dying life. Speak to us, God, your life-giving word. Only in silence the word, only in dark light, only in dying life. Speak to us, God, your life-giving word. All right, I know I'm ready. Nick, will you tell us this story?
Yes. So the story is the anointing of young David. The time of the judges like Samson and Deborah, ended, and Israel took a king. The first king's name was Saul. Saul would not live forever, so the day came when God sent the prophet Samuel, Hannah's son, to look for the next king of Israel and to anoint the chosen one with oil. God directed Samuel to a man named Jesse in a town called Bethlehem, the town where Ruth and Boaz once lived. In fact, Jesse was Boaz and Ruth's grandson. God told Samuel that the child who would be king would be one of Jesse's 8 sons. Samuel went as God said. He first saw Eliab, the oldest of Jesse's sons. Eliab was a tall, handsome boy. Samuel thought to himself, surely God's anointed one stands before me here. Samuel thought this boy looked as a king should, but God doesn't see what we see. We look at faces and figures while God looks at the heart. God said, do not judge from this appearance or his lofty stature. Then God told Samuel to pass Eliab by. Boy after boy, from Eliab to Abinadab and on down the line, 7 of Jesse's 8 boys came before Samuel. None was the chosen of God. Samuel must have wondered if he had heard God correctly. He had the horn of oil, but no one to anoint. He turned to Jesse, perhaps with some irritation, and asked, don't you have any other sons? Jesse said, well, I do have one other son, the youngest, but he's tending the sheep. Jesse didn't think this little boy of his was a good candidate to be Israel's king. He was so small. But Samuel remembered God's warning not to judge by appearances, and someone went and called young David from the pasture. David, though small, was also a handsome boy. Still, he must have been hot and sweaty from his work. His clothes must have been streaked with dirt from the fields and the animals. Yet none of that mattered. When the boy arrived, Samuel knew little David was the one of whom God spoke. Samuel took the horn of fragrant oil and poured it over David's head and all down his body. Then the Spirit of God came upon David and remained with him all the days of his long, exciting life.
Wow. Thank you, Nick. I love that story. I especially love the part when it says God doesn't see what we see. We look at faces and figures, while God looks at the heart. Isn't that the fact that people sometimes look at what's on the outside and only God can see what's on the inside? And
Mm-hmm.
God chose David for this important work of being king, and he showed that God had chosen him by pouring oil on his head, just like we pour oil on your head when you're baptized to show that God has chosen you for some important and holy work, even if no one else can see it, even if everyone else thinks you're too small or too big or wrong for the job. God sees inside. I wonder if maybe with your families tonight or with a friend, talk about if you've been baptized, what people remember about that. Or if you haven't been baptized, what that might be like for you. And what might be the important big work that God has prepared for